Dune is the champion of our modern age, the rising star of science fiction. This is a world I love to be in, exploring every corner of it. The worlds of different houses, the technological innovation, customized to the special needs of the local populations, the hidden meaning of giant monsters under the sea, as well as the tiny desert creatures above, the religious philosophy locked away in the crevices of rocks, the civilization hidden beneath the shadow of natural hazards thought unsurvivable, the string pullers manipulating houses into conflict to enact their century-spanning grand agenda, wielding supernatural potency in their words to bend the mind, the wealth of mystical experience locked in the sand beneath our feet, the great reverence of water, natural resources we were once surrounded by, become more valuable than blood from our veins, the contrasts of class from the emperor in the sky to the underdog royal Atreides ruling the desert, with a tenuous hold over their territory, to the Fremen in hiding who scrape for safety from their extraterrestrial invaders. The main character exists as the bridge between these distant social worlds, harnessing those less appreciated to drive a spear into the rulers of the galaxy. Paul would find them as a stranger and make his way toward being their savior. Overnight, he's caught in the crossroads of conspiracy. This shielded young man would be stripped of family, wealth, status, power, discarded to the desert to be tested, to build his own road, and restore his house's past glory. Paul wanted to distance himself from leadership. He feared the fallout of power, of being idolized, but the world would push and push, cornering him, weighing his reluctance against his mother's safety, his father's honor, the names Paul was born to live up to, Kwisatz Haderach and Duke of Arrakis, the tension of ethics, the desire to not spill blood, against the voices in his head telling him to rise, out of his own ashes, a new being, ruler of the galaxy. As his father suggested, a great leader doesn't seek leadership, he's called to it and he answers. As his arms master told him, mood has nothing to do with it, you fight when the necessity arises. Paul's mind is drastically incomplete when stacked up against what he could become. The harsh desert battlefield would override his comforting restraints, forcing him into alignment with the simple truths his most caring advisors left behind. For Paul in this film, the world is chaos, a disorienting fragmented picture of the future, a hallucinatory moment of substance abuse, with an uncanny habit of matching reality. The mystical mechanics of Dune allow for an expansion of ways a person has to make sense of the world. The creations of the mind are a window to the future. The main character is given an extra dimension of reality to distance him from the understanding of others, but also a personal journey that he alone can embark on, the exploration of his mind. The opening statement of this movie is that dreams are messages from the deep. On an ordinary level, dreams are irrelevant. For Duncan Idaho, everything important happens when we're awake. This would reveal to be misguided. Within the strange world of the Bene Gesserit, a dream is a tool. Dreams are a vision of the way things could be, a future better or worse. While the reality of them may be lost to time, in Arrakis the good dream is a green paradise overtaking the sand. A dream so important that lives are sacrificed to maintain a standing symbol of paradise in these 5 palm trees, an old dream as they call it, that Paul is meant to bring to life, that the Harkonnens cement their threat to by burning down these sacred trees. But there's a more entrenched and essential threat to the lost paradise. Spice is a beautiful substance. It's laced throughout the sprawling global deserts of Arrakis. It gives those who are home to the desert insight into reality that escapes outsiders, which has chaining effect on their ordinary life. As we'd expect of good world building, the Fremen are much more spiritual than the royals, more mentally directed toward the minutiae of nature, the vibration of the sand, the sunset, the whispers in the air. They're moved by prophecies over politics. They move with the rhythm of the desert and ingest its magic, producing their distinct eyes, giving layers to Duncan's view that the desert is part of them. Spice is as much the root of enlightenment as it is conflict, a gift and a curse. It expands the horizons of the mind, as well as the spaceships of interstellar travelers. One substance integrated into the lives of 2 civilizations for widely different purposes, and who lack respect for one another, bringing them into opposition. But more interesting is that this demand creates a dependence on the desert, dependence on the source of their struggle. Tensions form within the values of the Fremen. This sacred hallucinogen is the product of the wasteland they dream of unmaking. The underground biology labs stand as other remnants of that old dream. But as we learn, once spice was discovered, suddenly no one wanted the desert to go away, and they were abandoned. The desert's what makes the Fremen so special. It goes beyond spice. Their clothing is innovation to the desert climate. Their movements are for surviving the desert monsters. Their strategies are for preserving the scarce water supply. Their respected and worshipped creatures are the masters of the desert. Their advantage in battle is from using the desert to their gain. To be one of them, the tests for Paul to join their society are all about mastery over the desert. There's no Fremen without a desert environment. It's central to their identity. It's this embedding of a world into the DNA of its population that make this faction so rich with distinct purpose. The presence of such elaborate social genetics then gives Paul the opportunity to dive as deeply as he does into the Fremen way of life, to have a thoroughly intriguing journey in becoming one of them. Now, Paul goes through a lot of changes, but to appreciate change, we have to know where we came from. Paul's gifted from the beginning. He can duel with the best of them. He's the only man to wield the voice, has a naturally potent will, and a supernatural intuition for the ways of Arrakis. Most of these gifts are explored first in a peaceful consequence-free setting. His voice is used to pass a cup of water, which importantly reveals to us the incompleteness of his skill for the later true test, when he'd have to save himself and Mother from his hearkening captives. That past showing gives us context to understand the dilemma, appreciate his greater performance under high stress, and making sure to leave no key quality of Paul untested. Speaking of stress, emotional control is one of his key character traits. Things like fear cloud the senses, shelter your awareness from the finer points of the world. In the mind of a warrior, fear is dispelled with haste. Danger is a part of life. You don't understand life by running from it. As said, it's a reality to experience. Most of all, the Lisan al-Gaib can't forego it. He has too much power to be so fragile. For the Bene Gesserit, submission to your base instincts is akin to forfeiting your humanity, becoming no better than an animal. As they say, fear is the mind killer. And so Paul shows us that he can dig in and take the pain by keeping his hand in the box, understanding his path to survival. This is precisely what plays out as he flies through the impassable storm. With winds we learn tear metal apart. His temporary safety is about to give way to the unforgiving sands. He's filled with fear and tension, but a guiding voice tells him to let go. The Fremen and Bene Gesserit philosophy converge. His mother's words, fear is the little death that brings obliteration, and his Fremen teacher, we must move with the flow of the process, work together to drive him toward a new path. Calm and composure in the storm, giving himself up to Arrakis, free falling with his eyes closed. This small scene, big scene relation comes up in the one-on-one combat as well. We see that young Paul is already skilled enough when he locks in to match the seasoned veteran Gurney Howard, but the next duel would have himself, Mother, and the future of his house on the line. The completeness of his warrior talent would be tested as he was yet to take a life. There was something else he had to let go of, a part of himself that would have to go in order to live up to the name given to him, Kwisatz Haderach. The scenes where we explore these pieces of Paul can be rightly described as intense. All of these tests take place during action or under severe threat. We watch him let go of the fear, the conventional thinking, embracing the flow of the desert, while hanging by a thread in an old beaten down helicopter, facing 800-mile-an-hour winds, the battering of sand on glass, the wings being peeled off one by one with no end in sight, no vision in any direction as he desperately tries to keep the last of his family alive. In the chaos of all this, he calmly locks onto his mother's voice and the ones in his head, mixing the highs and lows, intrusive visions with strange messages while in peril, then adapting a radically different approach to survival, which to most would appear as giving up on yourself. All of this struggle, baked into the progression of his personal journey, makes this in fact an intense experience, tasking our minds to process it all at once, but inevitably losing control of the drama as it passes over us. The duel with Jamis, while testing and developing Paul, brings the ferociousness of the Fremen we heard so much about, high-speed stabbing, striking, parrying, sweeping, then the building curiosity of how this fight can fit into the future we've seen in visions. He'd saved his life in that sandstorm, mind you. Jamis becomes Paul's teacher, so we might try to foresee the middle steps that connect the present and future, though ultimately it just wouldn't fit in any straightforward manner, since the teacher gets slain. Laying on the mystery of interpreting Paul's visions, we learn something about the future, but what it really means might be elusive, and that allows us to balance this great tool of future sight with surprise in the moment. At the decisive step of their duel, we're hit with hesitation, fear, voices, and visions once more, telling him to take a life. a moral hurdle crossed when the necessity arises, as Gurney foreshadowed, death as a prerequisite for rebirth. The excellent music, of course, raising the intensity to greater heights. Paul's fighting for not yet a home, but a place of belonging, taking back just a piece of what was lost, with so much more to recover. For now, the only family remaining with Paul is his mother. Their relationship is rather business-oriented, rarely showing affection toward him. There's a tension in motives born from her duties as a Bene Gesserit and a mother. As a cult follower, Paul's a chance at finding the chosen one, and the methods of cultivating him to be that isn't pleasant. In fact, it may kill him. This seems to be Jessica's primary value, offering up Paul for torture and plausible risk of death, but still feeling heavy grief as her child suffers. There's love present, but the purpose of her order is so staggering. Centuries of work seeking a transcendent power that can revolutionize the world, motherhood gets overshadowed a bit, and these societal roles are so forceful beyond the height of most people's values that when Leto Atreides asks if she'll protect Paul, he must specify that the question isn't directed toward his mother, but rather the Bene Gesserit, which she won't answer. But this admittedly serves to make Paul's character more interesting. He has a mother, someone to protect when things get dangerous, but without being fully provided for parentally. This theme is intensified as Paul struggles with a horrid future sight. The person his mother is set on him becoming will bring war to the universe, driving Paul to blame his mother for the madness, feeling rejection toward his own power, complicating his gifts, forming the difficult path in the second movie, where he'd have to make the hard choice, even against such tremendous disincentive. This scene of Paul tripping in his tent has more to offer. Spice is everywhere in this world. You might get some in your food, or hit with a gust of sand, losing your mind in the middle of battle, which does happen to Paul. It gets in their tent, and without any danger present, just within Paul's mind, so much drama can take hold. The disorienting flashing signs of the future, making him fear his potential, giving us this small but potent insight on what's to come, fueling the intrigue for the franchise. This is the closest we get to a breaking of the character in this movie, and no swords need to be pointed at him. He's running in fear, honestly, crying, pleading for someone to help him. This is the next level fear that would test him once again, straining to the utmost one of his main skills, and it's the huge leap he's going to have to take in the next film. Taking one life was hard, but imagine billions spread throughout the galaxy. That's the main stuff I wanted to get to, but I don't want to leave a bunch of stuff unexplored, even if I don't see an easy way to fit it into the picture yet. The movie ending with the same sight of Chani that it began with in Paul's vision was a nice full circle, and reaffirmation of the predestination established for the journey. Chani, or Zendaya's character as you may know her, isn't in the movie a lot, but her scenes are effective at being mysterious, enticing the main character. There are some really good aesthetic moments. The way her blue eyes stand out in the desert sand is piercing, same for her bloody hands in this shot. She's both alluring and unnerving. One moment she'll be giving a pleasant ASMR call out to Paul, the next she's got a bloody knife and this mean look. And it's cool how when you encounter her for real, she's pretty normal. This shot of Paul touching sand through the water before leaving his planet was good symbolism. His last touch of the abundant water he's leaving behind, and connecting himself with the sand he'd be surrounded by soon. Water covering the sand, the future of Dune Paul would promise. The basic premise and setting of this series is simply on point. A world that has both futuristic technology, spaceships and lasers to appeal to Star Wars fans, but also this medieval stuff going on with great houses and sword fighting. Why are they using swords so much rather than the laser weapons? Not sure, but as a Game of Thrones lover, this series had a natural path to my heart. The sandworms are an excellent threat, the extent of which becomes more obvious in the second movie, the intelligence behind them, the worship from Fremen, this scene where the worm seems to observe Paul and pass judgment. But we'll have to wait for the next video to really dig into the enlightened worms. The fact that Atreides' house got completely cheated in battle and wiped out in the first movie was a bold misdirection of the plot. Now I will say this is a give and take scenario. More time with his house and family would have made their defeat hit harder, but by doing it so quick, Paul's development and achievement arrived sooner, and when you consider how much greatness he achieves in the second movie, it's hard to argue with. The minor focus on the desert mouse in this movie is so good when you see how it develops in the second movie. Such small details of the environment, like a mouse becoming part of the main character's identity, suggesting that every moment here matters. Paul's ring being used as a tool to maintain ties with his father and subtly reaffirming his commitment to carrying his family's legacy are great. Aside from this, I want to save some stuff about water and the Fremen for a separate video. But that's all for today, friends. Like and subscribe for more. This was Woski, and I'll see you later. Peace.